Hello guys and welcome to my channel The Analysis, and today we talk about the Hindu analysis of editorial September 12, 2019, and on our first page the first topic is the absentee constitutional court. Unlike in 1976, the judiciary has not upheld the suspension of civil rights. Instead, it has tucked, evaded, and adjourned. Ultimately, the object of depriving a few of their liberty for a temporary period has to be give to many the perennial fruits of freedom. It was with these words that the Supreme Court held that the fundamental rights to life and liberty stood suspended during Indira Gandhi's emergency. The court's verdict, popularly known as habeas corpus judgment, was based upon the principle of executive supremacy. This principle holds that in time of peril, civil liberties must be subordinated to the interest of the state. What are these times of peril? The government will decide. Whose rights will be curtailed and how? The government will decide. When will freedom be restored? The government will decide. The judiciary held the Supreme Court was to act on the presumption that powers of preventive detention are not being abused. The hollowness of the Supreme Court's position was soon revealed. After the end of emergency, the government's excesses committed under cover of the habeas corpus judgment came to light. This included the torture and murder of dissidents. The episode was a stark reminder of one's principle about absolute power corrupts absolutely. Our republican constitution is therefore based upon a system of checks and balances, where even the government must always be held accountable for its action. When these actions infringe fundamental rights, accountability must be sought in the court of law. The habeas corpus judgment betrayed that principle. It has been condemned as the darkest hour in the Supreme Court's history. In 2017, Carsten Court formally overruled it, stating that it should be buried 10 fathom deep with no chance of resurrection. In its place, the court erected the principle of proportionality. If the state wants to infringe people's right in service of a larger goal, then it must demonstrate that the measure it is adopting bears some rational relationship with the goal. More importantly, it must be so that the right are being infringed to the minimum possible extent, and the constitutionality of the state's action is to be tested by the courts. Keeping in mind Justice H.R. Khanna's famous dissenting opinion in the habeas corpus case that the danger to liberty lies in insidious encroachment by the man of jail, well-meaning but lacking in due deference for the rule of law. Habeas corpus in 2019. From August 5, 2019, the state of Jammu Kashmir has been placed under a communication lockdown. In addition, political leaders, along with the unknown number of other individuals, have been detained. These moves followed the centre's decision to downgrade J&K's special status under Article 317 of the Constitution and eventually convert it into two separate union territories. Both moves violate crucial fundamental rights. A communication shutdown violates the freedom of speech and expression, prevents those outside the state from being in touch with their families, provides cover for civil rights violations that cannot come to light, and finally, in this day and age, damages an entire infrastructure of health, food, and transport, causing real suffering. Detention self-evidently violate personal liberty, and over the last 37 days, government officials have justified both moves. In Brazil's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar asked, "How do I cut off communication between the terrorists and their masters on one hand, but keep the internet open for other people?" More recently, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval said the political leaders will remain in custody until the environment is created for democracy to function, and refused to say how long this would last. Mr. Jaishankar's argument was vehemently opposed. A few days earlier, rights experts from the United Nations had called the communication lockdown a form of collective punishment, where under the guise of prevention and entire population rights were taken away for the action of a few. Collective punishment is an inherently disproportionate infringement of fundamental rights. Others pointed at the irrationality of the justification if the mere threat of terrorism or violence is the ground for cutting off communication, then the lockdown ought to be extended to the entire country. Additionally, recent scholarship has shown that there is no evidence that communication lockdown contain violence. If anything, the available evidence point the other way, and argument was nothing but a reiteration of the principle of executive supremacy, that the government would decide when to detain, whom to detain, and for how long to detain, based upon its assessment of when a region was ready for democracy. The silence of the courts. If Mr. Jaishankar and Mr. Doval's argument was taken as the official justification for the lockdown and detention, then it should be clear that there are some serious doubts about whether the constitutional requirement of proportionality is fulfilled. But even as the argument has reached in the public sphere, in newspapers, through interviews, and in the halls of the United Nations, the criticism by UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet being the latest. There is one place where it has been conspicuously absent: the courts. Unlike the emergency, the courts have not upheld the government's action so far. What they have done is dodged, ducked, evaded, and adjourned. Political leaders, Faisal's petition challenging his detention has been twice adjourned by the Delhi High Court, one time because the government lawyer was not present. At the time of writing, it has been over 2 weeks since the petition was filed. Meanwhile, things have not been fared any much better at the Supreme Court. Petitions challenging the lockdown have also been repeatedly adjourned. The first time with the court remarking that the government should be given some time, a striking echo of the habeas corpus case. By the next date of hearing, September 16, the lockdown would have been in place for more than 40 days. But perhaps most grotesquely, the court has engaged in bizarre perversion of the rights to habeas corpus. When petition challenging detention came up before the bench of the Chief Justice of India in hearing take place, instead of calling upon the government to justify itself, the bench has authorized the petitioners to go to the Kashmir and meet the individuals who were allegedly under detention. But under our constitutional scheme, no citizen needs a certificate of permission from a court to travel through the country. And under cover of the granting this permission, the court has refused to pronounce on the validity of the detention themselves. It has sought the fashion and ad hoc compromises in individual cases without discharging its constitutional obligation to adjudicate the legality of the lockdown and detention. And so, through these judicial evasions, the status quo continues. Unchallenged executive writ. Thus, by not ruling upon the cases before it, in effect, the courts have allowed the infringement of civil liberties to continue, and they have done so in a particular insidious manner, by exempting the government from its constitutional obligation to explain itself, and by exempting themselves from their obligation to hold the government to account. This is nothing other than executive supremacy by stealth at the time at which the judiciary is most needed to defend civil liberties. Just simply vacated the field, absented itself, and chosen to walk away. In the 19th century, the Russian playwright Alexander Pushkin wrote Boris Godunov, a timeless tragedy about power and tyranny. Its last line is a stage direction upon the investiture of the new Tsar before the public. The people are silent. This is in stark contrast with lines uttered by Lord Aitken, a great English judge. Amid the clash of arms, the laws are not silent. In India in 2019, the people of Jammu Kashmir have been silenced, but the Supreme Court has elected to silence itself. Amid the clash of the arms, that is a tragedy in its own right. Well, this article is written by Gautam Bhatia, and he is a Delhi-based lawyer. For more topic, see you in the next video. Bye.